On a balmy July evening, during a sunset cruise meant to celebrate a lifetime of achievement, a woman's fight for survival began not in the open ocean, but in the jacuzzi of a $50 million yacht. Hi everyone, my name is Adam, and today we're examining a case that reveals how the most sophisticated prison can be one of your own making, built by the person who swore to love you. The story of Isabella and Alexander Sterling is a harrowing lesson in how a life of unimaginable luxury can mask a reality of terrifying isolation, and how a tech genius used his own inventions not to connect the world, but to orchestrate his wife's disappearance. Join us as we unravel a true crime mystery. Your engagement through likes, comments, subscriptions, and active participation is greatly valued. Dr. Alexander Sterling was the enigmatic visionary behind Nexus, the social media platform that connected billions. At 52, he was a billionaire philanthropist, a man who had dropped out of Stanford to build an empire from his dorm room. He was portrayed as a shy, awkward genius, more comfortable with code than with people. His employees revered his intellect. The public admired his generous donations to mental health charities. But this public persona was a carefully crafted algorithm, designed to hide a monstrous truth. 8 years ago, Alexander married Isabella Moreau, a rising star in the art world 15 years his junior. Isabella wasn't just a socialite, she was a celebrated painter in her own right. A graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design, her emotionally charged portraits had caught the attention of critics worldwide. She was the vibrant, human counterpoint to his cold, digital world. She ran a successful gallery in Soho before Alexander, in what he called a grand romantic gesture, funded her own sprawling studio and foundation. The Sterlings were the talk of high society. They divided their time between their tech-smart mansion in California, a penthouse in London, and their custom-built yacht, the Odyssea. They had one daughter, Chloe, age 5. To the outside world, they were the perfect fusion of art and science. Their foundation's annual galas were the events of the season. Isabella's publicist, Maria Flores, would later say she never saw anything but devotion from Alexander, calling him quietly adoring. And this is the terrifying core of this kind of control. Alexander Sterling wasn't a loud, jealous brute. He was a genius, a philanthropist, a doting father. He donated hundreds of millions to women's charities. This is how digital isolation works. The most dangerous captors don't need physical bars. They can build a prison with code and cameras, and no one will ever see it. The move into the smart mansion, presented as the ultimate in safety and convenience, marked the beginning of Isabella's digital cage. Alexander's Nexus technology was integrated into every wall, every appliance, every lock. In early 2024, the control became systemic. Alexander began using the house's AI, Aura, to monitor Isabella's every movement. He claimed it was for her safety and to optimize their lifestyle. Aura would report her eating habits, her sleep cycles, her heart rate. He gradually limited her access to the outside world, citing security concerns and paparazzi risks. He insisted she use a secure, custom-built phone he had designed, which he could monitor completely. This is the 21st century version of the slow boil. It doesn't start with a locked door. It starts with a convenient AI that makes your coffee. Then it's a security system that tracks your movement. It's a digital descent, each line of code another brick in the wall. Before you know it, you're living in a gilded prison, and the warden is the voice in your ceiling. The control escalated beyond the digital. Alexander grew intensely jealous of Isabella's art dealer, a man named Julian Carter. He accused them of having an affair, claiming their meetings about gallery shows were covers for a secret relationship. He used data from Aura, elevated heart rates during their phone calls as proof of her infidelity. The brilliant, independent artist who commanded 6 figures for her paintings now had to justify every text message and explain every fluctuation in her biometric data. Isabella, feeling her identity being erased, begged Alexander to see a relationship counselor. He agreed, but as Isabella would later state, he weaponized the sessions. He framed his digital surveillance as proactive wellness management, and her distress as emotional volatility that the data proved was irregular. He was, in effect, gaslighting her with her own vital signs. According to Isabella's later legal filings, the psychological warfare turned terrifying. Alexander began to suggest she was unstable, a danger to herself and their daughter. He pointed to Aura's data on her agitated sleep patterns as evidence. He started secretly administering low doses of sedatives in her evening tea, making her genuinely lethargic and confused, which he then used as further proof of her declining mental health. By the summer of 2025, Isabella was a ghost in her own life. Her world was the smart mansion and the yacht. Her communications were monitored, her body was drugged, and her spirit was systematically broken. Leaving seemed impossible. He controlled all the money, all the security, and was building a case that she was an unfit mother. But she couldn't have known that Alexander was preparing for the final phase of his plan, her permanent erasure. In July 2025, to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the Nexus platform's global launch, Alexander planned a romantic, private cruise through the remote Exuma Cays in the Bahamas. Just the two of them, with a skeleton crew that was fiercely loyal to him. For Isabella, it felt like a final, fleeting chance to reach the man she once loved. She had no way of knowing that Alexander wasn't packing for a celebration. He was packing for a murder. His plan was to use his technology and his knowledge to create the perfect, unsolvable accident. On the evening of July 12, 2025, after a quiet dinner, Alexander suggested they relax in the stern jacuzzi. It was a beautiful, isolated spot, surrounded by the vast, empty ocean. The crew had been dismissed for the night on his orders. The ship was running on a pre-programmed, automated course. Let's be clear. He planned an anniversary cruise. He chose the most remote waters possible. He sent the crew away and automated the ship. This wasn't a holiday. This was a tech CEO running a deletion protocol. A protocol to permanently erase his wife. He tapped his tablet. A moment later, a high-pitched, painful frequency emitted from hidden speakers around the jacuzzi. Isabella cried out, clutching her ears. In her disoriented state, Alexander moved with swift, brutal efficiency. He grabbed my head and pushed me under the bubbling water. I was thrashing, but he was so strong. His face was completely blank, like he was debugging a line of code. He held me under until my lungs were burning. This is the moment the user became a threat to be neutralized. The years of planning, the digital surveillance, it all culminated here, in a jacuzzi in the middle of the ocean. He didn't rage. He didn't scream. He executed a function. The function was delete. By a sheer miracle, Isabella's thrashing knee connected with his arm, causing him to lose his grip for a second. She exploded to the surface, gasping and choking. She scrambled out of the jacuzzi, stumbling onto the deck. Alexander didn't chase her immediately. He stood up, calmly picked up his waterproof case, and pulled out the needle-less injector. "It's a sedative, Isabella," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You're having a psychotic episode. You tried to drown yourself. I need to sedate you for your own safety." He was creating the narrative right then and there. The suicidal wife, the heroic husband. He lunged for her. She fought back with the raw strength of pure survival, biting his hand and making him drop the injector. It skittered across the deck and into the ocean. Enraged that his plan was failing, Alexander tackled her. They struggled violently next to the yacht's low gunwale. He was trying to overpower her, to throw her overboard. I was screaming, but there was no one to hear. The engine noise, the wind swallowed everything. He had his hands around my throat, pushing me towards the edge. I thought of Chloe. I knew if I went over, he'd tell everyone I jumped. The ship's horn let out a deafening, continuous blast. Lights on the bridge flashed. The pre-programmed course disengaged, and the massive yacht began to drift erratically. The unexpected noise and the ship's sudden movement startled Alexander, just enough for Isabella to break free. She didn't run for the cabin. She knew he could lock her in. She ran to the bow, to the one place she knew had an old-fashioned, hardwired satellite phone for emergencies, separate from the ship's main system. With shaking, saltwater-slick hands, she dialed the Coast Guard. Mayday! Mayday! This is the Odyssea. My husband is trying to kill me, she screamed, giving their coordinates before Alexander ripped the phone from the wall and threw it into the sea. He looked at her, his expression one of pure, cold fury. But the signal had been sent. The game was up. He failed with the water. He failed with the drug. So he reverted to a brute force method. But she had already sent the packet. She had already crashed his system. Isabella, the artist, outsmarted the tech god at his own game by using his system's overlooked physical failsafe. Alexander didn't say another word. He turned, walked to the ship's tender, launched it, and disappeared into the dark Bahamian night. By the time a Coast Guard helicopter arrived 90 minutes later, Alexander Sterling was gone. Isabella Sterling was found huddled on the deck, in shock but alive. The investigation revealed the depth of his premeditation. The ultrasonic frequency was a weapon designed to disorient. The drug in the injector was a fast-acting sedative that would have caused respiratory failure, easily mistaken for drowning. He had created the perfect high-tech murder. An international manhunt began. Alexander's assets were frozen, but his expertise in encryption and his vast network of shell companies made him a ghost. He had prepared for this. And here is the final, chilling log entry. While on the run, Alexander didn't try to contact his daughter. He didn't send a confession. He used a series of encrypted dead drops to initiate a hostile takeover of his own company's board, attempting to fire the executives who were cooperating with the investigation. His primary concern wasn't his family. It was retaining control of his code. He wasn't a husband who snapped. He was a programmer whose human wife was a bug he failed to fix. Isabella Sterling survived. She and her daughter Chloe are now living privately, under protection. She has become a powerful advocate for legislation against the misuse of smart home technology and biometric data. A global arrest warrant has been issued for Alexander Sterling for attempted murder. The tech titan who sought to connect everyone is now completely, utterly alone. Isabella Moreau was a world-renowned artist. She was wealthy, brilliant, and culturally influential. She had every resource imaginable. And she still almost became a silent, digital ghost, erased by her own husband. Her story is a stark warning for our times, that the technology designed to make our lives easier can also be weaponized to make our lives a living hell. Isabella fought back. She used her intuition against his logic, and her will to live against his cold calculation. She survived a predator with godlike control over her environment. Her story isn't just one of survival. It's a cautionary tale for the digital age. If it can happen to her, with all her advantages, it can happen to anyone. Your smart home should not be your smart prison. The provided text, Unraveling True Crime Mysteries, Your Role in the Pursuit of Justice, emphasizes the critical role of audience engagement in solving true crime cases. It states that likes, comments, subscriptions, sharing content, contributing information, joining discussions, and spreading awareness are crucial for shedding light on cold cases, bringing closure to victims, and ensuring accountability. The text highlights that active participation helps amplify efforts, unearth new perspectives, provide missing links, and keep cases alive in public consciousness, ultimately making the audience an integral part of the investigative process and a force for justice.